Ken Kaitin, who's been with the Tufts Center for the study of drug development since 1986 and has been its director since 1998. He's also a professor of medicine at Tufts University School of Medicine, also a professor of pharmacology and experimental therapeutics there as well. And Dr. Kaitin's expertise, he's published extensively on the factors that contribute to the slow pace and high cost of pharmaceutical R&D. He's also testified before Congress on these issues. And so we're going to close up the panel with him to hear his views on healthcare reform and how it has affected the pharmaceutical and biotechnology industry.
Thank you, and good morning to everyone. I just can't believe how many people are actually here. When I called Sarah at about 6 o'clock in the morning and said, you know, I think I can get in, but I don't think anybody will be here. She said, no, we're going to go ahead anyway. And I'm shocked. But anyway, this is great, and I appreciate being part of the panel. Let me just fill out a little bit more detail about our group. We're an academic group that studies the innovation process in the biopharmaceutical and pharmaceutical industries. And we work very closely with a lot of the companies that are in the room now, and it's nice to see some of the familiar faces of people that we interact with in some of our projects. We also work very closely with the FDA and regulatory agencies as well as policymakers around the world in some of the issues that affect innovation. I think right after the Healthcare Reform Act was passed in last March, my associate director and I published an article in Science that went through all the provisions of the Act and tried to assess who are the real winners in this. And I think based on what you've already heard from the other panelists and some of the things that we wrote in our paper is that if you go through provision by provision in the Act, there's an underlying theme there. And if you took just the name of the Act, the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, and if you had just arrived from another country, you didn't know anything about the culture here, you'd assume that this was a very pro-consumer act and perhaps anti-industry or anti-commercial interests act. The fact of the matter is, I think there's been a change in mindset within Washington. Perhaps that goes all the way back to Mark McClellan's tenure as FDA commissioner back in the 90s, when as an economist as well as a physician, I think he realized better than most other commissioners before him that you really can't protect consumers without protecting the industry. In other words, a strong industry benefits the consumer. And I think everything that has come out of Washington since then, for the most part, not everything, but for the most part, there is this underlying theme of not just patient protection, but innovation protection. And there are a lot of aspects of this act, as you know, in terms of, for example, the exclusivity, despite the fact that it's not really clear how this is going to be implemented for the biosimilars and some of the other provisions. A lot of this still has to be rolled out. With the change in power in Washington, there's already threats of not providing funding for the groups within Congress that would actually have to prepare the new regulations to implement this. So it's unclear the way any of this is going to roll out. But the bottom line is there's something very positive here. There are a lot of aspects of this that represent positive aspects for both the large pharma and the small pharma industries, including large biotech and small biotech. That said, one of the things that we do, and if you're not familiar with our group, we're the ones that put out the friendly numbers on how much it costs to develop a new product. I think we're the only group that puts out a figure based on actual cost figures provided by companies on what it takes to bring a new product to market, both a biopharmaceutical as well as a pharmaceutical product. If you look at the litany of challenges that the industry confronts, and you're all familiar with these, the patent expirations for high revenue generating products. In 2011 alone, there's an estimated $48 billion worth of lost patent protection that's coming up just this year. The increasing stricture in terms of gaining reimbursement for your products. Even therapeutic areas and indications that in the past were viewed as immune to cost pressures, think oncology, are increasingly forcing manufacturers to do market research and market analyses and studies that will ensure that that product can get reimbursement once it reaches the marketplace. We know that the public perception of the industry still remains relatively low. We know that regulatory hurdles, especially in the era of REMS and other risk management plans, are causing additional challenges for the industry. But at the end of the day, the one thing that the industry holds in its hand that has complete control of, for the most part, is the R&D process itself. And I'd say after 25 years of being in my group and actually being aware of my group and involved in some of its activities for 35 years since its founding in 1976, I can say that despite at least 2 decades worth of intense effort within the industry to improve upon the time, cost, and risk of bringing products to market, the time remains stubbornly long, risk levels have increased, and the cost is just going up at a very rapid rate. If you put a listing of all of the major challenges for the industry, healthcare reform would probably fall very low on that list in terms of the survival and the improved structure of the industry and performance of the industry. I'll just close with one area that's a particular interest of mine, and it actually has my 2 worlds collide. One of them is that we work very closely with the research-based industry, so I think often as I deal with companies in terms of what are the major challenges if I were in industry in bringing new products to market and being successful in the marketplace. But now with the new environment in academic institutions, and as many of you know, the NIH since 2004 has been awarding large multi-center grants called Clinical and Translational Science Awards to build infrastructures in academic centers to partner with industry, that we're moving more and more toward an environment where perhaps innovation entirely coming from the research-based industry is not sustainable, but more and more it's going to rely on networked innovation or partnerships with industry. Being an academic and being very much involved in my university, Tufts University's CTSA, or Clinical and Translational Science Award, or Institute as we call it there, I can see that I have the distinction of being able to see the challenges and the problems in academic industry partnerships from both sides, from the industry side because that's what we study, and from the academic side because I have to be part of that activity, both in the academic, in my academic institution, and I actually have opportunities to go to other academic institutions and deal more with that. It's a significant challenge, especially in the Boston area, where not only are academic institutions struggling to compete to get industry's interest, but also to compete with other academic institutions because we have such a breadth of them here in the Boston area. Now, that may sound like a negative, but in fact, I think that that's a positive, and it bodes well for innovation moving forward. But there's still very significant challenges involved, and even in these partnerships, the time, cost, and risk of bringing new products to market still represent formidable obstacles for all of you in the room who are involved in bringing new products to market.